creeping incrementalization. We've seen it time and again where a small proposal is put forward, and before you know it, it turns into a big proposal. That's why we have a portion of Kitts Beach Park that started out, the intention there was to replace with a small 4,500 square foot restaurant, an aging concession. It's turned into a 20,000 square foot facility owned by a billionaire in Texas who specializes in mismanaged and distressed assets. So how one of the best, most loved parks in Canada can turn into an asset owned by a corporate vulture is a perfect example of the slippery slope or creeping incrementalization that we see here in our neighborhood. Another good example would be how a small seasonal theater operation is now wanting to build what amounts really to a foundation of the type that you would see in the commercial district. So we're very familiar with how small little proposals are. So if we seem to have little patience for what a particular candidate or party is considering a small proposal, it's because we've seen that movie before. We know what happens. We know how it turns into something that wasn't intended. Subsequent boards say, we just want to make this small change. And then a board after that, we just want to make this small change. And then the operator ignores the conditions under which they're allowed to operate in a public park, and it all goes to hell. So keep it logical. Slippery slopes are allowed though. So the topics that are near and dear to us, probably the first one I'll start with is the bike lane through that was proposed last year through Kitts Beach Park and Hadden Park. I'm a cyclist. I'm a dedicated cyclist. I'm probably more radical in that regard than most people that you would call cyclists. It's my primary means of transportation from Monday to Friday, and most weekends as well. So I'm all for that. But I'm also a lover and a neighbor of Kitts Beach and Hadden Parks, and I see how busy those parks are, and I see how many people are there, and I know how many people would be displaced if you put a bike lane through the middle of it. I'm also, like many people in this room, in favor of a broader solution, in favor of bikes, but also in favor of parks. And in our particular neighborhood, we see compromises, ways to perhaps accommodate both of our loves. So perhaps I'll open it up to each of you. I'll mention that that HUB, the bicycling advocates, today published results of a survey given to city councillors, mayoral candidates, and parks board candidates. The question relevant to us had to do with, does anyone know it off the top of their head? It had to do with...
like an ice cream cone. Right,
yeah, okay.
Otherwise,
it distracts me though.
Yeah.
Okay, so HUB very helpfully asked a question. I don't think it's a very helpful question. It's a one-size-fits-all question, and here it is. Would you vote in favor of infrastructure investments that separate bicycles from pedestrians and motor vehicles within parks? So forget for a moment that somehow motor vehicles need to be in parks, and that's the stupid part of the question. And forget as well that the question, given, I guess, possibly given the silly nature of it, it wasn't answered by all the candidates. Now, this is the burden of incumbency, I'm sorry, and also the burden that comes with having answered this question. But the question was answered primarily by vision candidates. Every one of them answered in the affirmative. I don't think that should come as any surprise because they were the party that introduced this motion last year. Let's see if there's anyone else here. Vision, Cope. Anita said yes, but I'll leave it to Anita to provide the nuance for that. And please, Trevor and Coree and Catherine, please you can provide some nuance as well, because I realize that these questions are damned if you do and damned if you don't questions.
I think the question actually makes a lot of sense, and for one very simple reason. There are motor vehicles in our park, in Stanley Park, the Causeway. And the question actually speaks particularly to a proposal that's the park board will be considering in the next term, which is about whether we should have a separated bike path at the Stanley Park Causeway. And this resulted from the death that happened of a cyclist on the causeway last year. And my answer to that question is absolutely yes. We need to protect motorists and cyclists from accidents, and so I think that's an important investment. But I think this is also a good time to talk specifically about the bike path at Kitts and Hadden Park that came about, and I want to first of all, spend some time talking about why the decision was made in the first place and where we're at today and how we want to move forward with it. So I'll say first of all that the Park Board considered the proposal coming forward because we believed that there was community support for it and we approved it. As soon as I got a call the next day from, as soon as I'll just answer the question, and then if there's subsequent questions, I'll be happy to answer them as well. But I heard the next day after the approval was made from Mr. Howard Kelsey, who called me on my cell phone, and we had about a 20-minute conversation about why he opposed the bike path, and we talked about it, and I said that let's get together with Malcolm Bromley, the general manager of the Park Board, and have a discussion about how we can solve the community's concerns with this question. Subsequently, there was a rally at Kitts Beach, which I came to along with Commissioner Constance Barnes.
Can I add, subsequently there was a statement by Commissioner Jasper that the issue would not be revisited, consultation was done.
Done deal.
Done deal, Jasper.
So I just, sorry to...
Sure. If you wouldn't mind, I'll just finish speaking and then we can address
No. What happened to the done deal?
No, that's fair. That's fair. Sorry, I felt like adding it.
No, that's absolutely fair. I'm just speaking about from the perspective in terms of what I went through.
There he is. Here's the man.
Subsequently, I went down to Kitts to listen to the many people that were there, and I spoke. And one thing that I said, resulting from the decision, was that it needed to be revisited, and it needed to be revisited in consultation with the community. As we started hearing more feedback from the community over the course of time, and I'm summarizing at this point, we decided that it needed to be taken off of the table.
What about the lawsuit?
We'll bring these things up after Trevor has a chance to...
Speaking from my experience as a candidate, and I think for the experience of all candidates, I think it's just nice to maintain a decorum of respect for all candidates here while we're speaking.
Fair enough. When someone's got the floor, they've got the floor. So there will be an opportunity for questions.
But I think one of the great opportunities with forums like this is that whether we agree or disagree, we can all be heard, and we should all be heard. So, just going back to that rally, I think we heard from the community that the solution that the Park Board approved wasn't the right one, and I will fully admit that. And I'm actually quite proud that we decided that we were going to revisit that decision and take it off of the table. And so, moving forward, Adam, I think that you put it there.
Guys, Trevor's got a chance to speak here, and I appreciate it. So,
thank you very much, Adam. And I think actually you put it very well, which is that there's probably a better way forward that we can do. We do know that my opinion in terms of the current situation at Kitts Beach Park is that I don't think it's safe for pedestrians and cyclists on that narrow pathway. So we need a third way. What that looks like, I don't have an answer for. I think that we could probably get a bunch of folks in this room together to come up with that answer. Over the next term, if I'm re-elected, that's my commitment to you. Thank you.
Of a group of you here tonight is going to be a terrific board. I know you're all dedicated to the city, you're all dedicated to the parks. Thank you for that. And if the future Parks Board was made up of the people in this room, we'd be fortunate. So I'll ask you, show of hands. If the issue came up before you as an elected Park Board Commissioner, would you vote in favor of a path, forgetting for a moment the legal issues around Hadden Park, would you vote in favor of a path through the parks or against?
Are you talking about Kitts Beach Park?
Kitts Beach and Hadden Park.
Those in favor first. Yeah.
So
All those in favor, hands up. Okay, come on. So is it safe to say that all of you are opposed, or is anyone sitting on the fence?
Maybe we could speak to it.
Okay, Stuart. But I think we may have established that no one wants to today commit to support for this proposal, and that's progress, I'd say.
I would call it progress as well.
Or fear of this.
I thank Commissioner Loke for his answer because it shows the fundamental flaw in the government that we have today in Vision Vancouver, in that they made a decision and then they consulted. I've always maintained that leadership is not telling people where to go and taking them, but leadership is finding out where people want to go and finding the way to take them there. And this is a fundamental problem we have in the city. We see it in the result of so many court cases that are going on. We see it in people's disenfranchisement or their sense of disenfranchisement. We see it in their sense of that nobody's listening to me. And we have to change that. The only way you're going to change that is to change the government at City Hall and at Park Board. Green Party values are, it's from the bottom up, not from the top down. I was having a conversation earlier with a gentleman and talking about this, that you want to make a change in the city, you don't have staff make a report and then do a consultation on how you want changes to that report. You go out into the community to find out what changes they want, and you build your report based on that. That's democracy. That's listening to the people. And if the government has an idea, well, we would like this to be part of that, that's the time to bring that in so that people know right from the beginning what that change is. This city government also passed a resolution that said no net loss of green space. And yet they were wanting to asphalt a huge swath of Hadden Park and Kitts Beach Park. The Green Party believes in no net loss of park space, not just green space, because as we know at Oak Ridge, the new park's going to be a roof on top of a parking lot, which is not a park at all.
Thank you very much.
Freeway was bobcasting and Mariel's lawsuit. Nothing would have been paved over. Sorry? Megan, I'm very sorry. No disrespect. I was following the story. The thing was going ahead. 12 feet wide. That wasn't just going to be a little path that you cruised through. That was going to be a path you flew through Kitts Beach, you know, off the Burrard Bridge down there. I think you can't put everything in that little park. Right through that picnic ground, there's alternatives. Either we have to sometimes get off and walk our bikes for a little bit, like we do in English Bay. Same as when you come down Cornwall Street and you get that path. There's people riding down that path and people walking all in the same area. You've got to get off your bikes. Maybe if that's it, we can have people ride up Arbutus, or there's the York Street bike lanes, or maybe just bypass it a bit. I don't know exactly how it will look, but it can't go right through the middle of everything. And thanks to Bob, we're lucky we had a legal grounds on this one, or it would already be through. Anyway, sorry to take a turn.
Thank you. I agree with you. Bikes should be lots of places. They should probably be lots more places than they currently are, but they shouldn't be everywhere. Stephane.
So, I was actually at that meeting that night, and I just would like to make a comment about the remarks that Trevor made. You know, Aaron Jasper and many of the Vision Park Board commissioners that night they all voted in favor of the bike lanes, and they also, John made a comment and say, you know, I'm going to vote, I'm not against bike lane, I'm in favor of bike lanes, but I feel that we haven't had any consultation. And one of the answers from Vision said, no, we actually had enough consultations with the community, and most of you, a lot of you were in the room that night, and you've never actually heard about this bike lane going through Hadden Park. So John brought and Melissa voted against it, and you know, the NPA put more bike lanes than many bike lanes in the city, and we're in favor of bike lanes. We're also in favor of consultations with the local community.
I think a good place to start with consultation is to tell people what you're consulting on.
What bothered me, I think, most about it was the divisive politics that was taking place. If you were against having a bike lane through the park, you were against bikes. Yes, and correct. That wasn't true. A lot of people said, no, I ride a bike. I used to ride a bike before my knee left. And Hub had a survey during the election and said, are you in favor of separation? And I said yes to the short answer, but in the comments I said not at the expense of green space, and there should be public consultation wherever the bike lane is supposed to go. I walk around Stanley Park. I'm glad to have the separation on a seawall because it makes me as a somewhat awkward walker feel safe. But I've also walked along Kits all the way from Granville Island out through Vanier and out to the point where the stairs are. And I wouldn't put a bike lane there. People said, why not Ogden? That sounds fine to me, but somebody else might have a better suggestion. So I just want to say, COPE does not believe in divisive politics. We believe in inclusiveness and community engagement. Thank you.
You know, it's like listening to a parallel universe, because I was there, and it was clear that it was a done deal. It was a done deal. The vision commissioners all said it was a done deal, and they mocked me. Trevor, you mocked me in the meeting because you said, oh, there's lots of consultation. Well, there wasn't. Clearly there wasn't. So, you know, if you're going to come here, you have to deal in the truth and you have to deal in facts. And I was there and I saw what happened. I'm not against bikes. I moved to the Olympic Village so I could ride my bike around the seawall. I have it downstairs. I can go on a bike ride. I love it. I love getting out on the bike. And so do most people. But when you talk about that divisive politics, it's not the way we should do that. We shouldn't be mocking people because they don't approve this particular idea or that. We're there to represent the public. I'm there to listen. And Howard knows I'm there to listen, right? And that's really important. I mean, I think we're all going to face things over the next 4 years. This is the way I look at it. You can't predict every issue you're going to get. You can't predict that. So what do you got to do? You want to elect a team that you think has the capability to really look at all sides of the issue, think it through, and hopefully make a decision that the community will support. And that's what we should be doing as a community and as park commissioners, listening. And we see the same thing with the community centers, a very divisive way of doing politics, and it's time to stop that. It's time to listen. It's time to do the right thing in Vancouver. We have a beautiful city. I'm so proud of it. So I appreciate all those people who stood with me on the beach that day.
I know what the interchange was, but I would mention that when, in the last 6 years that I've been involved with the public library, we have had a process called community-led librarianship. And we very deliberately engage the community to lead the decision-making that the library board subsequently implements. I would bring that kind of approach to the park board decision-making. I'd also bring my background of studying at the program of negotiation at Harvard to build consensus as we move forward on decisions. I think there is a lot of repair to do, but I think that we can work together as a city to do it.
I think the case with Hadden Park highlighted the benefits of having protection, having legal protection. Harvey Hadden specified that the park be left in a natural state for the enjoyment of the public. And it was that protected that park. Years earlier, when there was a legal action against the commercial restaurant, the development of the restaurant at Kits Beach, there is a trust that protects Kits Beach. Its intent is probably the same as Harvey Hadden's trust, but it was worded a little more loosely. So it was not effective in stopping that development. What we would like to see, and what John Coupar has raised a couple of years ago in motion with the Park Board, 2012, is a motion entitled The Protection of Vancouver's Public Parks and Green Spaces. John, you are the mover of this. I don't see who's the seconder of this.
It was Melissa.
It was Melissa DiGiamoto. Okay, thank you. Whereas the Vancouver Park Board is responsible for over 200 parks and 24 community centers, as well as beaches and green spaces. The Park Board understands the importance of all these assets to Vancouver's healthy and active lifestyle. The 2020 Greenest City Action Plan recognizes on page 41 green spaces have been shown to benefit our physical and emotional health by reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, and stress. There might be a typo here. The presently parks and green spaces in Vancouver can be probably the shouldn't be there. Presently, parks and green spaces in Vancouver can be repurposed or removed from our park system with a 2/3 affirmative vote by City Council and Park Board. Therefore, be it resolved that the Park Board directs staff to work with the City of Vancouver Legal Services to develop strategies and legal means to ensure that parks and green spaces are protected in perpetuity. Therefore, be it further resolved that the public be fully informed on a regular basis on progress, and that staff report back to the board on such progress every 6 months.
I'm very, very happy about it, and all sides passed the motion. But the rub is, they passed the motion and then staff did nothing. So they didn't report back in 6 months in spite of me asking over and over and over again at the end of park board meetings. So they've just let the motion die, basically. It's really important that we find permanent protection for our parks. The only one that's protected now really is Stanley Park because it's the federal government, it's a lease to the city of Vancouver. But all the other parks, and we just lost Hastings Park. Despite a unanimous vote by the park board, the city took away that, and basically the only thing we're responsible for now is around Empire Field. Even though there's a big chunk in the capital budget that's charged against the park board to do a bunch of work at the P&E. So you have to be careful how things are progressing. So that is a key priority for me, should our team be elected, to find that legal protection for parks. It's essential. It's gone on way too long. And it really came forward when there was some talk about development around the Langara Golf Course. So it's really important.
I just want to add to what John Cooper said and just identify what we think is a slippery slope issue, because we were asked to do that. I'm really concerned about language such as net loss of green space. That's very misleading. And that does not ensure permanent protection of our parks. It means that they can be repurposed or they can be taken out of the system. And I think you need to be really cognizant of that, because we have seen, you know, as was pointed out, small proposals that move into larger ones, parks that have come out of the park system versus retaining the park space and looking for opportunities to grow it. So, you know, I can't stress enough how supportive as an NPA slate we would be in working with John Cooper and the NPA team to move that motion forward into actual protective legislation so that you can have peace of mind that your parks that are here today will be here tomorrow. That foresight, what happened with Stanley Park, it's why we have it. We cannot let that not happen to some of our beautiful parks, including Kitts Point here. I'm a former Kitts Point resident. This is near and dear to my heart. And if you guys don't want to see that happen, I suggest you think very seriously about how you cast your ballot on November 15th.
Again, I think it's open to interpretation, like you said, and this party's proven that, you know, in 6 years, they'll basically do what they want. They'll say they've, you know, committed to the community, we've heard your voice, and then proceed with what they think is best. You know, it's a big brother approach, and it obviously doesn't work unless you're a developer. And then that green space will be translated into a park on the 32nd floor that your kids can go and play on. That's the way they see, you know, that park space. Well, we retained a green space because it's on that building, and that's what they wish to do. And it's sad when we have 30 gardeners for the city of Vancouver and over 33 staff for communications provision. Where's the sense in that alone? You know, as you said, the greenest place in Canada. You know, people land here and love what they see. And it's sad that we have 30 people looking after our gardens in Vancouver, you know, and what they're doing with the community centers alone. Oh, well, you know, those community centers are suing us. Well, like you folks, they had to. They had a gun to their head. And if they don't protect themselves for what they had, they're just going to have it taken away and redeveloped. And that's sadly probably the truth.
We actually want greenery where it is. So that goes for Vanier Park, that goes for Kitts Beach, for Hadden Park. As for the incremental growth of buildings such as the restaurant, Stuart voted against Cactus Club when he was a commissioner on the way that was pushed through on the community there. And I was one of the initial people on the Vancouver Lifeguard Association that saw the first drawings of the lifeguard tower, the 3-story tower that had the lifeguard station on the bottom, and we didn't even have a tower there. And we refused over and over, and we were pushed through with the final one. And that patio that is not allowed to be there between the lifeguard tower and the restaurant was fought against, and they said it would never happen. I was there this summer and people were out there on the patio. So we got to look at those initial drawings and make sure that you guys fight for what you want. So keep your voices, they make a difference.
It's something that for myself, who has a background in ecological restoration, it's something I believe in passionately, the importance of having healthy and sustainable ecosystems in our city. I think an interesting point when it comes to the protection of our parks is around the Provincial Park Amendments Act that a Vision Vancouver Park Board commissioners voted in favor of. Our NPA commissioners voted against it, which would allow the provincial government to have resource extracting happening within our parks.
Our city parks, or are we talking provincial parks?
Provincial parks, but
okay,
we had.
We're hoping to talk.
I understand, but what I'm saying is that
the neighborhood, the city. problem.
Can I just finish? Thank you. So, but what I'm saying is that we are committed to the protection of our green spaces, and that is related to our provincial parks as well. And if you look at our capital plan, we're committed to a 10-acre waterfront park along the Fraser River. We're committed to new parks within the downtown south, as well as on the East Fraser lands. And because that's something that, as Vision and a Vision Park Board team, we're committed to keeping green space and to growing green space in our city when we can and when we're able.
The key basis behind the motion that John put forward is to keep parks. Right now, the proposal was to turn the 18-hole Lingera into a 9-hole, and then subsequently change the zoning on part of the land to commercial or housing or something. So the basis is to actually keep the park, wherever zoned as a park, to a park, and ensure that legislated such that it can't be pulled out by a 2/3 vote of the Parks Board and 2/3 vote council, which right now anybody can take out.
So this park here is RS1, single-family residential zoning, oddly enough.
Yeah, I live in a house that's zoned industrial, so it's grandfathered in. Yeah, it's older than the zoning bylaw. So, I think this is a great motion. I think it's unfortunate that it's probably unlikely to do anything. As you said, like the staff have not reported back. The park board meetings that I've been to, you know, the staff show up and they tell the park board commissioners how things are going to happen. So it's not even you guys that are not being listened to. You know, the park board commissioners, well, they're being listened to, but they're not saying, there's nothing to say. The staff show up and tell them how things are going to be going. So when you're talking to the commissioners, I'm sure they're listening, but it's the staff that you need to be talking to because they're the ones making the decisions. And this is something that's happening. We need to be talking about more than keeping the green space we have. We need to be holding people accountable to the commitments they have to build the park on the Concord Pacific land. We need to be talking about why social housing and affordable housing units are being knocked down next to Emery Barnes Park. And this is stuff that the Parks Board is all held accountable for. I think that what we've seen under this administration is not just these issues coming up in parks specific areas. They're actually using the park board to reach beyond things that are normally the purview of the parks and affect other areas of city governance and centralize park stuff that is traditionally in the purview of the parks, like the community center associations, and get that budget into part of the general budget, general revenue. Yeah, so I think that's really why I'm getting involved here.
Community centers have been run by volunteer boards forever. It's been a great system. It put, since 1934? Since 1934. It puts the local community into the community center. So could I, obviously this is an issue, I think probably it affects more than just Kids Point. I'm sure every one of you has a view on this. So who can I start with?
Maybe one per party?
Yeah. Trevor, you started off previously, so I'm going to give someone else a turn. And Nina has got her hand up, and so...
Erin,
that's right. So feel free to talk about whatever issues related to the community centers that you'd like to, whatever's important. Because I don't know a whole lot about this, I'll admit, so I'm looking to you guys to guide the conversation here.
Okay, well, just so you know, there's 6 lawsuits going on right now with the community center associations. As the NPA team, my name is Erin Shum with the NPA Park Board slate. We are fully supportive and committed to supporting the community center associations. We believe they do a great job knowing and understanding what the community wants and fundraising. They're able to turn a dime into a dollar. I don't believe that it's right for Vision Vancouver to take that autonomy from them and take and centralize it. I believe we should respect the community and support the community center. I grew up at Renfrew Park, and that was where I went to preschool. So I'm fully committed and supportive of all the community center associations in Vancouver. And I cannot stop saying it's about customer service. We need to respect the community. And you know what? Hashtag this. Vision Vancouver has not supported the community center associations, and NPA is here to listen, understand.
Provincially to get money so we could subsidize all the programs that we offer there. Most of the programs are free, and people come in to use the community centers. And that's what the community centers are all about. Now to take them away and not guarantee how they're going to do their revenue, how they're going to bring their revenue in, how they're going to be able to generate money, is a disservice to the whole community and to the whole citywide.
Yeah.
Going for federal fundings and provincial funding that the park board cannot do. Only nonprofits can do this, and we're in danger of losing that. So there's a lot of misinformation that's out there, and we have to understand what this was all about in the beginning, which was a power play and a play for money that they wanted. That money belongs to the community. It was raised by the community. It should stay in the community.
Yeah.
There are ways of having equity. I suggested 2 of them in a province article last year. There's many other ways. We can have the joint operating agreement with strong community associations within the park board. What we need to do, though, is stop the process now. It's so broken. Elect a brand new board of people who are willing and open.
I just want to say, like, to start with, leisure access program, a card that's existed, has already been that card that gets you to every community center. For another thing, memberships, the park board memberships, when I've had to buy them, when I have been in the higher income bracket occasionally, I've bought them and gone to all the community centers. And the one thing that I've always been really proud of is being able to buy memberships at the various community centers, knowing that a $3 membership or a $1 membership or this or that is my way of putting something back into those community centers and keeping programs alive. They create various programs, including food security programs, different art projects where you have community artists that most, like, often are the ones coming in not even getting paid. They come in and create murals, they create all kinds of projects. There's already massive, you know, movements going on throughout the city where we have the banner projects, we have artisan residencies, we have a whole bunch of these things going on where they're not hugely funded.